Welcome, everyone, to the Metrics International Forum. The forum is organized by the Meta Research Innovation Center at Stanford, or Metrics for short. The center is directed by John Ioannidis and Steve Goodman, and we are a research group and fellowship program dedicated to finding ways to improve the validity and transparency of scientific research. My name is Lena Koppel. I'm a visiting scholar at Metrics, and I will be moderating the session today. All of the forums are recorded and can be accessed on our website. And please mute yourself during the talk and keep your questions until the end. You can also write them in the chat during the presentation. So I'm happy to welcome our presenter today, Michaéla Schippers. Michaéla is Professor of Behavior and Performance Management at the Rotterdam School of Management at the Erasmus University, Rotterdam, the Netherlands. She holds a PhD in psychology from the Free University in Amsterdam. And she will talk to us today about the work she has done to increase study success. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Michaéla.
Thank you. Oh, thanks for the nice introduction. I will introduce myself a little bit as well. I've been with the Rotterdam School of Management for 22 years now. And I'm teaching courses on behavior in organizations, positive psychology, and the future of work. And so I also do a lot of research at the same time. And it's usually educational research in order to make sure people are their best possible self, but also have some more study success or any success. So one of my hobbies is Taekwondo, one of my long-standing hobbies. So this is what I do in my free time. I thought it was nice to share it with you. This is an actual photo. It's not photoshopped. It's in the mountains, in Swiss mountains, actually, near the Aletsch Gletscher. So, and I am one of the scholars that like to do a lot of topics. I started out with one topic. It was superstition in sport. I was even a student back then. Then team reflexivity, that's the extent to which teams learn and try to improve themselves. Ambidexterity in teams, diversity in teams, entrepreneurial intentions, life crafting, social exclusion, social networks, motivational mindsets. That's actually been done by a PhD student of mine who now graduated. Organizational energy and societal demise and its reversal, and that's only some of the topics I'm doing. But if you overall, I really am interested in optimizing performance and well-being, which also fits with my chair. And this is, I'm doing this in the Erasmus Center for Study and Career Success that I founded in 2017. And we started to do contract research after we found out it was very successful for our students, and we wanted other institutions to profit as well, and to build a database at the same time. So by now, 25 institutions and about 60,000 students have participated in the goal setting program, but it's I started calling it life crafting. So if you hear me say life crafting or goal setting, it's basically very similar intervention, not always exactly the same, but that's being described in the papers. So what I will talk about today is mainly life crafting. As I said, I called it also goal setting, motivational mindsets, and the use, why are we using in general ineffective interventions, and why did I get interested in that? Well, I started finding out that it really worked, which I will tell you in a minute also. And then I found out that our students actually did much better. And then there was a very nice meeting in 2014 at our university, and the Dalai Lama was there to see the future of education and educational interventions. And then the people were presenting like a host of topics on how we let our students choose their own curriculum, how we take them to the mountains and let them reflect on their life and everything else. It sounded great, actually, but every time there was no presentation of any research findings. So I was like, yeah, it's nice, but I would like to have evidence-based intervention. So that's one of the reasons I started. I will tell you a little bit more about that as well. So if we still have time, I'll also talk about societal demise, and that's basically if we don't use effective interventions, or if we start to use widespread ineffective interventions, there might be societal demise. That's why I'm talking about that as well. Some future research and invitation to collaborate. So contact me if you want to collaborate. I will also show a slide of that later on. But how it all started was I was teaching classes like this. We have really big classes, like 700 first-year students coming in each year, and these are only the Dutch students. We also have international students, which is called International Business Administration, or IBA. We have 550, I think, coming in each year, so huge numbers of students. So I was teaching a class like this in the beginning of the year, and it was really beautiful. The whole class was filled with enthusiastic students that really were aiming to, start an academic, at least a study and finish their studies. And then at the end of the first introduction, which was the kickoff class, which we did with program management each year, I asked how many of these students remain at the end of the year. It was just an innocent question. I was just wondering. And then they said half of them. So I was picturing that like half of my students wouldn't be there anymore at the end of the year, the first year. And I was like, this is such a waste of talent, basically. It's not only, motivation. It's not only that they cannot do it. So there's a host of factors that probably plays a role there. So I started to get interested in that topic. And after a while, we even started, the university even said, okay, we are gonna ramp up the whole how do you say, the bar. We're going to raise the bar for students. So they already had to have like 2/3 of the program they had to finish in the first year. And then the head of the university said, okay, let's make sure that they finish everything in 1 year. But if half of your students already drop out doing 2/3 of it, not even getting that goal, how will they do better? If they, how many students will drop out by then? So we have to do something for them. We have to help them. And so I came up with this study that I found with Dominique Morisano et al. Reflecting on personal goals improves academic performance, which was basically a goal setting program, thinking in the first part about your life, and the second part setting goals. I will tell a little bit more about that. But it was found that she had a control group and a goal group, and the goal group did better in terms of GPA after the first semester. And these were basically struggling students. So I thought this fits in the new science of wise psychological interventions. It's a short intervention. It takes a couple of hours for students to write their goals down, and a little bit more. And Gregory Walton is actually at the psychology department of Stanford, and I visited him and in the with the Carol Dweck and Gregory Walton lab in November, when I also visited Johnny Unides at Stanford and the group, of course. So some of you that are now listening, I've seen, and thanks for joining. So I also thought, okay, this is about the power of words. What do you write? How do you write? And it's guided writing. It does matter how you write, but if it's guided writing, people can change their ways. So I started writing a paper about life crafting as a way to find purpose and meaning in life, but also study success, not only purpose and meaning. So what is life crafting then? It's a process in which people actively reflect on their present and future life, set goals for important areas of life, social, career, leisure time, and if required, you can also maybe say, my life is perfect already. I don't have to make any concrete plans, but they make concrete plans and undertake actions to change these areas. So they make a plan, and they also write down what they will do if they have any obstacles and everything. And the idea is to get these plans and actions more congruent with their values and wishes. So, many people want to, if you want to have a diploma, it's good to study now and then. But of course, there's procrastination. There's other things that are also interesting, student life. And so life can happen while you're making other plans. But if you make good plans, they may actually come true. So in 2018, or 19, forgot, I did a TEDx talk about this, where I said it's basically 3 Ps: write about your passion, then make a plan, and the third part is making it public. So basically it looks a little bit like this. Part 1 is writing about habits, social life, career. But the most important part in that part 1 is the ideal future. Writing about your ideal future if there were no constraints. Let's think, everything is possible. And then you write about the life that you, what life will look like if you do not change anything. If you don't make any changes, what will happen then? So it's really thinking about this. So here's an example of we made it a little bit more lively for students, giving them tips and everything. So here's somebody writing that he, I know, is very passionate about teaching and supporting students. And one habit that he's talking about is sleeping in. And the day doesn't start that well, because if you sleep in, you already lost half your day, and then you get hurried and stressed out. So he makes then in the second part a future plan. Okay, 6 to 8 main goals. So you have to come up with a plan to reach that goal. And you have to say, okay, what is my number 1 goal? And that is really important. I've seen, I haven't published that part yet, but what I've seen is that the more time students allocate to their first goal, the better it is for their study success, basically. And they have to make backup plans, and also if-then plans. So for instance, if a student asks me to go for a drink on the day of the exam, then I will say no, but let's do it tomorrow after the exam. And these may seem like very small changes, but if you do that, we have 12 courses in the first year, and 12 exams for students in the first year. So if they do this 12 times, and we have seen that students started to do better at the first exam, actually, that will help them. So the third part is creating an I will statement. That was not originally in the intervention, but we at Rotterdam School of Management added that. And the idea is to combine that with a statement with a professional photo. I started with that too. So you see my photo here as well. It's an older photo, basically. So these are students, and staff is also encouraged to do it. And we saw that if students did all these parts, they started to do much better. So we wrote a paper about that, writing about personal goals and plans regardless of goal type boosts academic performance. And I did it with, for instance, Edwin Locke and Gary Latham, and of course also Dominique Morizano was involved. And 2 colleagues from my university, Ad Schippers and Elisabeth de Jong. So what we found was really interesting. It was a time-lagged quasi-experimental design, because we were not allowed to do a randomized control trial because the head of teaching, he said, well, the academic director, the director of teaching, he said, well, we already know it works, so please do it give it to all students. And then I decided to compare the cohorts, the goal setting cohorts or the life crafting cohorts with the control cohorts, which were the years before. And there hadn't been any changes in those 4 years, or hardly any changes in the curriculum and everything. So it was a nice timing in a sense. So we had 3 questionnaires, T0 at the beginning of the academic year, T1 in January, and T2 in June. And we controlled for a lot of things like gender, age, personality, motivation. And we wanted to see if the intervention had an effect. And academic performance was the dependent variable. So the intervention effect, so we compared if the intervention worked. But within the intervention, I wanted to know, does it matter if they write more, so number of words, and the goal attainment plans, the quality of the goal attainment plans, did they write really general or very specific plans? The goal type, was academic versus non-academic. We had like 7 different goal types, but then after looking at all of them, the most important distinction was academic versus non-academic. Non-academic could be like better health, better trying to visit family more, or all these kind of things. So an extent of participation was, did they participate in one part of the intervention? We had 3 parts, as I just mentioned, 1, 2, or 3 parts, or 0 parts. So that was 1 to 4, this variable. So here are the effects that we saw in a hierarchical regression analysis. And then you saw that the number of words that were written was significant. The goal attainment plans and the extent of participation were still significant if you looked at the over and above the control variables. And what we saw is that goal type didn't matter. So academic or non-academic goals didn't really matter for academic performance, at least. So what we also saw that in general, the cohorts that participated had a 22% increase in academic performance, and the dropout rates also went down by 22%. And there was a huge difference between students that didn't do any of the, because it was part of a course, so it was expected from them to do it, and it was even somehow, yeah, because it was part of this course, they should do it. But 12 students, or the a number of students didn't participate. It was a small number of students. I think it was only 50 or something, but they had only 12 credits, and so it was until full participation, which is basically doing all 3 parts, like the part 1, part 2, and the I will. They had 49 credits, and 60 credits was the maximum. So you could have 60 credits in 1 year. And credits is the most important outcome variable in the first year, because in the Netherlands, it doesn't say, GPA in the first year doesn't say anything, because if you have only 1 course and you pass it, then your GPA could be very good, but then still you need to have like 11 other courses. So this says something about the number of courses that the students have passed with a good or a good enough grade. So, and also what after a while I started to calculate how much extra income there was for the university, and it was 2 million euro per cohort, which is a lot in the Netherlands because the tuition fees aren't that high. So that was more than I expected, to be honest. And what we found was that the intervention also closed the gender and ethnicity minority achievement gap. So if you look at here are the 4 cohorts again, the 2 control cohorts, or for this study I took 3 control cohorts actually, so 1 more and an intervention cohort. And then we saw that in the intervention cohort the gap was changed quite a bit. The gender gap closed by 98%, so was almost non-existent anymore, and the ethnicity gap closed 93% by the 2nd year, and I think it was 38% in the 1st year, which was still quite big, and very nice to see, of course, because that's a long-standing problem, the differences between the genders. Actually, it was female students doing better. If you are wondering, you can also see it, I think. No, it's not in the, yeah, it is female. You can see the female students up there. And then I had a part-time PhD student who wanted to do the experiment and see if it could be found in higher vocational education. And so he did a large-scale field experiment, which was a randomized controlled trial as well. Well, not as well, because mine wasn't, so his was. 1,134 first-year business and teacher education students. Actually, these are our neighbors. And it was interesting because when he saw the first results, Isaac Decker was the first author. He was very he was kind of disappointed because they expected, of course, about 22% increase, and then we found out that these students were writing 1/3 of the number of words that our students wrote. Our students wrote on average 3,000 words, and they wrote on average 1,000 words, and still. With these few hours, like 2 hours or so that they were working on this, there was a 15% lower risk of dropping out. So it was a really nice effect. But he didn't find the differences for men or ethnic minorities. And also the extra question was, does it do anything for self-regulated learning, resilience, grit, engagement, or well-being? And he did not find these effects. So this is the table, and the intervention is all on the top. And all the other things that he measured, well, not all the others, but in this one, he looked at the effect of the interventions and looked for ethnic minorities, male, teacher education. So the kind of education. So here you saw also this positive effect. And then I had a PhD student who said, well, maybe students start out with a different mindset when they enter the study. So should we look at the motivational mindsets that they have? So we call that the motivational mindset model. And he wanted to see if goal setting, life crafting, essays of students were indicative for a mindset change. He decided to call it goal setting, so that makes it a little bit confusing at times, I think, but he wanted to see especially the mindset change. So what kind of mindset did we have? We looked at 3 dimensions, self-transcendent. So there were students who said, I want to study because I want to learn things that will help me make a positive impact on the world. Self-oriented, I want to learn more about my interests. And extrinsic, I want to earn more money. He calculated he made a mindset classification tool. That was his first publication, and he used K-means cluster analysis to classify students into motivational mindsets, which are here, like the high impact mindset are students that strive for high grades, a rich social life, self-actualization, purposeful career, and are more future-oriented. The social impact mindsets were more play a meaningful and instrumental role, follow interests and share ideals, open-minded attitudes during study and work. And the self-impact mindset is more a focus on personal performance, money and career-oriented, and studying seen as a doorway to success. And a low impact was shallow perspective on the future, passive attitude towards studying, but usually an active social life. So it's more the study was less important to them, it looked like. So he was coding this, and he also wanted to see if there were changed mindsets. So if students actually changed their mindset, and if they changed it, he did also content analysis on a number of students. And he wanted to see what happened if they, for instance, changed from a low to social or a self to low impact mindset. So students who changed from this low impact mindset to a social impact mindset, they expressed intrinsic self-oriented and intrinsic self-transcended motives to a similar extent as stable social impact mindset students. So that was nice. So they indeed seem to have changed. And a positive change in mindset occurred during the reflection assignment. And so he could see from the content analysis that this change was happening, that they wrote down that their goals were towards a more social impact mindset by doing this content analysis. And then so he wanted to look we wanted to look actually at a more broader or a bigger number of students, but also to see if this mindset churn affected academic performance and how goal setting helped them with their purpose in life. So the mindset churn was considerable. On average, 58% of the students had changed their mindset at follow-up. And students with a low, and we unfortunately we couldn't. It would be nice if we could have, of course, looked at, if we didn't give them an intervention, if the mindset would be more stable. But unfortunately, we were not able to do that. As I said, our director of education didn't want us to leave any students out because he said, yeah, we already know it's positive, and so there was no randomized controlled trial, which I would have liked to see. But 58% of students changed, and students with a low impact mindset at follow-up were more likely to drop out. So if they kept their low mindset or changed to a low mindset, they were more likely to drop out. And for the group of low impact mindset students changing to a social impact mindset, an increased sense of purpose was found, so which was really interesting. So he concluded that it might be a purpose fostering intervention for students, especially if they enter with a low impact mindset. And here is some of the graphs to show that. So with a stable mindset, you don't see that many changes in time 0, time 1, and time 3. So throughout the academic year, the only change you see is the dashed line indicates significant difference is the social impact mindset. It seems that at time 1, they have a slightly lower purpose development. But here you can see for the low to social, there's quite an upturn in their purpose development. And for the self to low, if they change from the self impact to a low impact mindset, you see quite a drop also, especially at time 2. And it's interesting that for the low to social, the biggest impact seems to be quite immediate after the intervention. Okay, so what we also did, we had a grant application to see if we could put this in a chatbot. And interestingly, this chatbot was tested we started to test it in a randomized controlled trial just before the COVID-19 crisis hit. So we started in 2019, and in 2020 this hit, and then we did an extra questionnaire. So what we found was that, and this is actually preliminary finish because the colleague I'm working with, she got ill for a while, so we couldn't finish the paper on that. It's still to be finished, let's put it that way. But we see that the chatbot, the students who used the chatbot, they could it was a randomized control trial. So if they had a chat in the chatbot condition, they had their ikigai, which is purpose in life, still, let's say, on par. But if you look for the control group, this purpose in life seemed to drop quite considerably, and this is a significant difference. And for future self-continuity, which is how you see yourself in the future, if you see yourself functioning in the future, let's say there's people who live in a impoverished environment, they don't usually have a very high future self-continuity. And in 2020, this dropped for a lot of people. But you can see that for people in the chatbot condition, this even increased during the, or just before the crisis, and it stayed on par, which is interesting. So the life crafting intervention, we had several PhD projects, about 10 publications on this topic so far, and we had several successful grant applications and about 10 years of data. So I would encourage you to contact me if you like to collaborate on one of these topics, because I feel like we have only researched a little bit of what we have so far. So in general, I needed 10 years to reach about 60,000 people. And I started wondering, why do such evidence-based interventions not spread like wildfire? And it's basically interesting because, of course, I'm only giving presentations, but it's not really being sold in a sense. We have a spin-off. It's called the Gold Start. But still, it's not like, you would expect something so nice. Actually, I did this with about 5 people, all in part-time. So that is basically very interesting to see how you can reach so many people with so little staff. And some ineffective interventions spread and keep being used sometime for ages. And I think when I was in Stanford, I used the example of bloodletting, which has been, I think, been used for about 100 years, and it was already very early on. It was clear that it wasn't really helpful, at least not on the scale that it was used. And of course, you can make like a list of ineffective and effective interventions, and we know that, for instance, there's one that's called scared straight, which is when you have juveniles youth on the brink of offending, or they're already offending small scale. But there is this intervention that's called scared straight. So the police will bring them to it's a program where they bring them to prison, and there's inmates shouting at them, "Don't do as I did, because it's not really good for you, because you end up in prison. You don't want that." And it turns out that people or youngsters after that are more offending than before. So that's really interesting to see, and it's also interesting to see that we already know that in the 70s that it doesn't work, and that it's backfiring basically. And then it's still being used, and you can binge watch it if you want. So it's really not clear why these interventions are keep being used. So also I saw this during the Corona crisis. So I wrote a paper for the greater good, and I saw that there were a lot of negative effects, mental health, hunger, all these kind of things. And then I got in contact with John, and we wrote a paper on the rising inequalities during the COVID-19 crisis, and also a proposed way forward. So even democracy was a little bit at stake, and we know that from a lot of reports as well. And I wrote this paper on decision-making processes in COVID-19 crisis, but still it's not being used. And so even if you keep making the wrong decisions on a grand scale, on a global scale, then in the end you could get caught up in a debt spiral. So I started thinking about how individuals, teams, organizations, or even whole societies can be caught up in a spiral of dysfunctional decision making, and then get into societal decline. So we started to call that the debt spiral effect. And but if there is a downward spiral, you can also go to an upward spiral. So we're modeling societal demise, but also its reversal. And for my podcast, followthescience.nl, I made a little film about this. So it's continuous flawed decision making. One bad decision leads to another, and can even lead to the collapse of an individual, group, or society. Just like an antmill, they keep on walking in the same direction, even though it's leading to the death of most ants. So this is a huge a picture that I will not go into in detail, but basically what is a first step is that it's being denied. There is a crisis and something needs to be, but initially it's being denied or ignored. But if it's not ignored anymore, then there is single-minded focus on one set of outcomes or one set of solutions. And the series of low-quality solutions leads to a lot of outcomes that you shouldn't want to have, which is one is dysfunctional behavior of citizens and elite, and a worsening of the situation. So, and then the population can get into society in survival mode, and you get this whole downward spiral. So what can we learn from this? So I just was involved in a paper, what lessons can be learned from the management of the COVID-19 pandemic, which might be, you can say it's in the past, but if we don't learn from it in the next pandemic, we will repeat the same mistakes maybe. And I started developing letters to the future, which is basically writing about the ideal future for the world if there were no constraints versus the future that will come to pass if we don't change anything. And in the second part, people will write about what they can contribute to any changes in this. And this is very similar to the life crafting, but I think it's then more on a world level. So, and the role of science in this, of course, which is John's main or one of his main topics. He has a lot of topics as well. The role of science, and also I'm writing about what, and I didn't mention it here, but what politics can do to avoid biases and errors. You wrote a paper about that. So future research, and that's research that I already started to do some of it, is the overview effect. It's when you view the Earth from space, but you can also induce that by letting people look at a film. You cannot send everybody up to space. And if you combine it with Letter to the Future, the idea is that the engagement with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, which is ending poverty, zero hunger, and all these lofty goals, maybe you can increase the engagement with this. So my dream would be to make sure that everybody can profit from effective interventions and also contribute to a better world, like I hope to do. Thank you very much.